Hey, what's up, guys? Had a little snafu. I was doing part two, getting ready to upload part two, and realized that it had been corrupted, and so we're gonna have to re-record part two right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and get to it. It seems like everything else is in order, so I'm just going to go back over these pay-per-views. So, ironically enough, starts off with WrestleMania, which is this weekend. I'm going to start at the bottom of the card, which is the Battle Royal. And, you know, there's a lot of guys that just don't get to be on the main show unless they're involved in heavy storylines, just because of a lot of part-time talent and celebrities and whatnot. And so WrestleMania has really become about those aspects instead of about the wrestlers themselves sometimes. So it's nice that they get included. Usually it's bumped to pre-show like this year. So I don't know. It's so far it was the first year or two. It was really nice, and now it's kind of become pointless in some ways. It's just like a rub to an up and comer. So it would be nice if there was a little bit more meaning to it. If it was a signal that just besides this guy's going to get a push at some point in the next year, then maybe they would get a title shot or something. But keeping along the lines of what WWE is already doing, I'm not changing any of that. So the Battle Royal, I end up including Baron Corbin, Mojo, The Ascension, 18 English, Breezango, American Alpha, or Beta, or whichever you want to look at them. The Miz Taraj, Rhino, Hawkins, Goldust, Dillinger, Big Show, the Clones, Sin Cara, Killian Dane, Eric Young, Alexander Wolf, Cassius Ohno, No Way Jose, Lars Sullivan, Titus O'Neil, Apollo, Kane, Hurricane, and Mike Kanellis. I think that's probably rounds it out. If not, toss in a few more. I use a lot of NXT talent in this one. I believe they should be using some NXT talent in this. Instead of just calling up random guys like they did in this past year's Royal Rumble. I do include Hurricane because I actually have plans for him coming up after this. So I would use this Battle Royal to plant some seeds that is going to happen in the future, kind of like they do with Royal Rumbles, or at least they used to. I would start to show that the Ascension maybe not on the same page anymore. I would show an alliance between Hawkins and Kanellis to tease them in an upcoming tag team. I would show the Miz Taraj having a little dissension amongst Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel. And I would have the Hurricane Helms, and Goldust work together. And that would be the start of an upcoming tag team between the two of those guys. And then I would let a lot of these NXT guys really shine against some of these veterans. Overall, my winner would end up being Cassius Ohno. Big sign of him coming up in this next year. The match starting the show, I would end up doing Bobby Roode versus Randy Orton, which would kind of be the culmination of their feud. I would end up having Randy Orton definitely turn heel completely instead of just like this anti-hero teasing a heel turn aspect. This is what gets so confusing with people, and they don't understand what a tweener is. And I could do a whole episode on that. But Orton definitely needs to turn heel rather than stay face. And I believe Orton wants to turn heel. I mean, it's what he knows. So I would go ahead and have Orton turn heel before this matchup. Rude's mega over. I think he could do it against Rude pretty easily. And with Rude having lost the United States title recently, Orton will be that big heel feed that Rude needs coming off of that. So that's the start of the show. I would also continue the Bray Wyatt and Matt Hardy feud that seems like it's over in reality for the most part, but I would continue that. It's kind of hard to save this feud in a lot of ways because they gave it such a poor beginning, and they didn't really give these guys time to talk on the mic or anything. And anytime you have Bray Wyatt in a feud, you want him to speak. So the whole laughter bit, I never understood. But I would give these guys maybe some kind of gimmick match. I would have Jeff return in this matchup to give a little bit of heat to the feud. And I would have a botched finish, which would allow Bray Wyatt to win. Maybe Jeff accidentally hits Matt. Maybe there's a little bit of miscommunication there. And ultimately, we would see Jeff turning into Brother Nero in this matchup. You know, it looks like it's an accident. Matt gets knocked somehow, and he falls into the Sister Abigail. Jeff and Matt collide around the apron, and when Jeff gets up, he's no longer Jeff Hardy. He's Brother Nero, and maybe we have some sort of physical transformation that he can do really quickly, whether it's pop contacts in for his white eyes or something that he can do there at the apron that the crowd won't really notice, at least the cameras won't. And we would end up having Brother Nero join Bray Wyatt and beat down Matt Hardy. And just kind of give this feud a little bit of life and a little bit more of a push. So WrestleMania would also be, the New Day would be wanting to host it again. And there'd be some guys that wouldn't be too happy with that feel like maybe it's their chance to host WrestleMania. And that would be Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. And so for the whole show, we would see these impromptu matches where both teams are going against one another. There would be like some sort of misunderstanding, that would get these guys on their own page too. And then, of course, all the typical antics would follow. We would probably see stuff like little challenges, maybe a hot wing competition between Kevin Owens and Big E, and maybe the greatest dad competition between Kofi and Kevin Owens, a best friend competition between Big E and Sami Zayn, or dance off, something to that effect. Ultimately, this would lead to a match sometime on the card between them, a little short match for fun. That would be a little intermission in between some of these matches, or at least after a big match that needs a little downtime. We'd also have Seth Rollins versus Cesaro. And this would culminate the feud between these teams that were just plagued with injuries this season. Of course, I would have already taken out Sheamus with his injury and everything. He's just a little bit of a liability at this point, I feel. And then Rollins has already been left out with Ambrose and Jason Jordan. So I would continue these guys in a singles matches, a singles feud, without their partners. And I think this might be a match that would steal the show, actually. Then we would have Roman Reigns versus John Cena versus Samoa Joe versus Finn Balor. And these are the guys that are main event level that just aren't in the main event. And they're mad that they didn't get their title shot, and they're mad at each other for that. I would toss Samoa Joe into the program late, since his injury and whatnot. Right now, he's not back for WrestleMania, but I feel like they haven't talked about him lately, that he's probably either ready to go either at WrestleMania as a surprise or the following night on Raw. So I would toss him in maybe the Raw or two before WrestleMania into this picture just to liven it up some more. Cena and Reigns can get a little stale sometimes. This would be a moment where we would start to see Roman embracing a heel turn. And this is if I'm writing it, and I know it seems like WWE is completely against the idea, but if the fans are hating on him, he needs legit hate instead of hate because of the mega push. This at this point, Cena is pretty much a part timer as well. So, yeah, Cena's going to show up for this, but where's Cena going to be afterwards? He's making movies right now and everything. So, Samoa Joe and Roman Reigns would kind of start to show some allegiance in this aspect. Since Finn Balor is a face at this time, and Cena still a face, of course. So, kind of make it a little bit even. Plus, Joe and Reigns, they have a little bit of chemistry, and they have some background, and they're both Samoan. So maybe the two Samoans stick together on this one, and I would actually have Samoa Joe walk out with a win here. It wouldn't make any sense to give it to Cena, and I don't think it hurts Roman or Balor to give Joe the win. My next match would be the SmackDown Tag Titles, which are the champions are the Usos, and they would face off against the Bludgeon Brothers. This is a pretty easy one, in my opinion. You gotta give the Bludgeon Brothers the win. The Bludgeon Brothers have been on a roll, and so you gotta keep that going. I think if having them lose at this point would just end that push. The Raw Tag Titles champions are the Revival, and they are going to face the Good Brothers. Got to give the win to the Good Brothers. Intercontinental title match is the champion is The Miz, and he's going to face off against Elias. And this feud would just be building on the mic. I mean, this feud writes itself. It's pretty easy. Miz, I would start to give. He's so good that you could easily start to turn Miz face, and this would be the feud to do it with. Both of these guys, like I said, great on the mic. And this match would ultimately lead to the breakup of the Miz-Taraj in a lot of ways. And there would be a little bit of animosity between all three members. Got to give the win to Elias at this point. At WrestleMania, it'd be a big rub for him. U.S. title match, champions Jinder Mahal finally toppled Bobby Roode. He's going to face off against Rusev. Here, I think it doesn't matter which one really would win. It would be nice to give Rusev the win just for that cheap pop in a lot of ways. Kind of like they did Zack Ryder a couple years ago with the Intercontinental title. I think if I did give Rusev the win, Jinder would probably take it back before the next SmackDown pay-per-view. So either which way works. Universal title match. Braun Strowman, who won the number one contendership after the Royal Rumble debacle, he's going to face off against Brock Lesnar finally. And this match, Brock trying to get out of it, and Brock trying to sabotage this match as any means possible not to face Braun Strowman, because this is the one guy that Brock does not want to get into the ring with. You got to give it to Braun. He's hot right now. He's on a roll. Got to have Braun Strowman go over Brock Lesnar, whether Brock resigns or not. And the main event for me would be the world title match from SmackDown. And we had Dolph Ziggler as our champion coming in here. Dolph beat AJ Styles at the last pay-per-view for SmackDown. And this is a triple threat. Dolph Ziggler versus AJ Styles versus Shinsuke Nakamura. And this is, Zack Ryder again at ringside for Dolph Ziggler, which helped him win the title to begin with. And this match, we're going to have Ziggler steal the finish from Nakamura after he hits AJ with the Kinshasa. Ziggler either hitting a super kick, pinning AJ, or just tossing Nakamura out of the ring, and Ryder holding his feet or something so he can't get back inside. So Ziggler getting that cheap heat, healing it up, retaining the title. And either of these matches could really finish the show. So it's a matter of how you would either want to go with Braun or the super heel heat with Ziggler. Which one would you choose? It's tough to say. You could actually start the pay per view with one of these matches, and then build down, and then back up to the other one. If you want to end off on a high note, Braun Strowman would be the way to go. Next night's Monday Night Raw, so that's a big celebration. I might would go that way instead. We're gonna go straight into the next pay per view, which is a Raw pay per view. So that is Backlash, and not necessarily a huge pay per view. There'll be a slight amount of build between this since WrestleMania, and this is going to be the end all be all for what we assume is the Seth Rollins Cesaro feud, and this is going to lead to a ladder match. Loser leaves Raw. And so I believe what I had here was Cesaro ends up losing. And so Cesaro ends up getting fired. He's gone from Raw. Seth Rollins moves on. We also have Bray Wyatt versus Jeff Hardy. So at this stage, we have Jeff as Brother Nero and Jeff Hardy, and kind of showing a little bit of instability in his character. And we would see Jeff kind of going back and forth. He turns on Bray, he turns on Matt. So Jeff becoming his own man, so to speak. And it doesn't really matter who wins this match per se. It would look like Jeff is back to his old self, Matt in his corner, but then at the end of the match, Jeff and Matt kind of get into it as well. And just kind of really making this feud complex between the three of them. Then we have Drew McIntyre versus Heath Slater. This is our first big call up from NXT after WrestleMania. Of course, Drew McIntyre is going to have a big win. You could interject the 3MB stuff into the storyline if you want to get into that. It's possible. Not a very big storyline anyway. Big Cass returns. He's going to face off against Roman Reigns. This is probably a big push for Cass coming back after such a long injury, and they were really high on Cass before he left. I would have Cass come back as face. Just trying to avoid some of the heat from everything with Enzo and all that. Plus with Reigns looking to be more heel, embracing his heelness. I think this would probably work. The build-up would be Reigns running his mouth about Big Cass. And Cass returns, answers the call. You know, who's the big dog in this match? The 6'9" Big Cass. I'm sorry, 7 foot tall. We have Finn Balor versus John Cena. Again, we'd have Cena kind of running his mouth. They had the 4-way, and Samoa Joe won it. Maybe Cena blames Balor. Maybe Cena's like he belongs on 205 and not the main roster. And have Cena run his mouth about he could beat Finn Balor with one arm tied behind his back. And Finn Balor accepts. And so that's what they make it. John Cena with one arm tied behind his back. And this would kind of lead to a little bit of a Finn Balor heel turn. That just a tease. Balor accepts, shows a little bit of heel tendencies here. And in this match, AJ Styles is at ringside. And maybe AJ doesn't get involved. He just watches. He's just like taking notes and whatnot. But it's enough that Cena is distracted. Ultimately, Finn Balor is going to win this match because John Cena's arm is tied behind his back. So there is that. We have the Raw Tag Title match. The champions, which is the Good Brothers. And they're going to face off against the recently brought up Authors of Pain. And these guys are just going to rip through all the competition in the weeks building up to this match, the 4 weeks or so. And they're going to earn their number one contender spot. They're just going to be dominating. And in this matchup, it looks like the Authors of Pain are going to win until there is a DQ because of a masked brother coming out and interfering in the matchup. Who is it? Who knows? But it might look a lot like AJ Styles. Or is AJ still at ringside? And so we would play off of that. Maybe it's somebody else. Maybe it's another good brother. Intercontinental title match. Miz versus Curtis Axel versus Bo Dallas. And here we have the Miztourage implode. Miz ends up winning the belt back from Elias on Raw. Maybe possibly the next night. We might go 2 weeks. Who knows? But I would imagine probably the next night after WrestleMania, Miz wins the title back. The Miztourage still isn't happy. They're bickering and fighting. And everything kind of goes to crap. So we build up to this match. The Miztourage imploding. Maybe even Axel and Dallas start referring to themselves as the Entourage again. And in this match, Elias interferes. And Curtis Axel ends up walking out as the new Intercontinental Champion. And so at this stage, we're kind of going to start moving Miz out of the second tier title into a world title view. The Universal title, the main event of the night, is going to be Braun Strowman, the champion. And he's going to face off against the guy who won that fatal four-way from the Raw Top Stars, which is Samoa Joe. And this match ends up getting thrown out because of interference from a returning Dean Ambrose. Of course, Samoa Joe took out Ambrose, and so Ambrose is going to come back, and he's gunning for Samoa Joe. Pretty much it's going to be a count-out win for Braun as Joe and Ambrose brawl throughout the arena. And that's going to be the Backlash pay-per-view. Short and sweet, really. The next pay-per-view, of course, is SmackDown. It's going to be a Payback. And let me just flip over here to the opening match. Probably pre-show would be Victor versus Connor, where we have seen the Ascension kind of have beef with one another. In the WrestleMania Battle Royal, Connor and Mojo teamed up for the most of the match after Connor eliminated Victor. So we're going to see Connor and Mojo start hanging around each other as Ascension implodes. Connor versus Victor. Connor's going to end up winning. Mojo's in his corner, probably cheats to help him win. So we'll see a slight Victor face turn here. What I would do with Victor, it would mainly be on the weekly shows and just building him up slowly. But we would probably start to see Connor and Mojo doing the tag work. Whether that is Victor getting kicked out of Ascension and Mojo taking his place, doing the whole get up, is probably the way I would go. Next match would be Cassius Ohno getting called up to SmackDown. He would face off against Baron Corbin. This is just a feeder. Cassius Ohno is going to walk away with the win. Rusev Day versus Sammy and Kevin. And this is just pushing Sammy and Kevin a little bit, giving them the win over Rusev Day. Rusev Day still big faces. Just a little bit of heat for Sammy and Kevin. Rusev Day, I don't think this would hurt them at all. Shinsuke versus Randy Orton. I would have that match in a double countout. Just a small return to this feud. And, you got to kind of keep Shinsuke relevant. But I don't know if you want to push him too hard at this point after his loss. So you want to keep revisiting that. Shinsuke Ziggler, building that up, but Shinsuke keep getting kind of the boots put down to him and avoided So you got to keep Shinsuke relevant, but you got to throw obstacles in his path as well. The next match, AJ Styles versus Cesaro, who ends up arriving at SmackDown after being losing that Raw match. Loser leaves town. So go give Cesaro a little bit of rub here right off the bat. He's going to actually pick up the win against AJ Styles. So showing that Cesaro is a contender on SmackDown. We have the World Tag Titles, the Bludgeon Brothers, champions. They're going to face off against the Usos again. And this is just the return match, but it's also going to be a testing point for the Bludgeon Brothers to make sure it wasn't just a one-off. The Bludgeon Brothers are going to retain the titles. Next match will be United States Heavyweight title match. And it's going to be Jinder Mahal versus Kofi Kingston. And this is going to be Jinder's feud with New Day. And in these matches, we're actually going to tease a New Day split. And it'll be over kind of the long haul. Kofi, for the contendership for the U.S. title, Kofi ends up defeating Xavier in the finals match. So there will be a little bit of animosity between these guys. Big E will be at ringside, but they just can't pull it off. Jinder ends up winning and retaining the U.S. title. And at this pay-per-view, we're also going to find out that Shane McMahon and Daniel Bryan have undercut the contract that Bobby Lashley was coming to SmackDown, and they have exchanged Bobby Lashley for someone else from the Raw roster. They've come to terms with Kurt Angle, Stephanie, and exchanged Bobby Lashley for whatever certain amount of favors and Seth Rollins. So Seth Rollins coming to SmackDown, and Seth is going to get the world title match coming in, and that is against Dolph Ziggler. So we're going to have Ziggler versus Rollins for the title at Payback, and Ziggler with Ryder in his corner is going to retain. And we may see some interference from Cesaro himself at ringside. Maybe he doesn't get involved in the match per se, but enough to distract Rollins somewhat. Ziggler wins, and yeah, so that would be Payback. That would be the Payback pay-per-view. And then after that, our next pay-per-view will be Money in the Bank, which I believe is that where I ended up leaving off and covering. Nope, I also have to do Money in the Bank here, so let's get into that. Money in the Bank is a pay-per-view for both shows. So I kind of go a different route with Money in the Bank than what usually happens. So, starting off, I'm going to probably start the show with the Intercontinental title match. The special guest referee is going to be The Miz. So, as you guessed, it's going to be Curtis Axel versus Bo Dallas for the Intercontinental title. Miz is special guest referee to call this match straight down the middle. And this is really going to see if Axel and Dallas can get over more with the fans. Curtis Axel is pretty over. Bo Dallas, not as much. I would have Bo pick up the win here. Bo was great in NXT. I think he just needs a moment to shine. The next match will be the Raw Money in the Bank. Hopefully by this point, Dean Ambrose is ready to get back in the ring, because he's going to be the Money in the Bank, along with Elias, Big Cass, Samoa Joe, Roman Reigns, and Drew McIntyre. So a nice little mix of guys that have been around for a while, guys returning, like Big Cass and Samoa Joe, and the new guy, Drew McIntyre. I would end up having Drew McIntyre win the Money in the Bank match here. The SmackDown Money in the Bank is Seth Rollins, Bobby Roode, AJ Styles, Shinsuke Nakamura, Baron Corbin, and Cassius Ohno. And much like what I do with Raw, I end up having Cassius Ohno pick up the win here. So both of these matches, you're going to see the NXT guys picking up the wins. I I don't think it would be expected that both would pick up the win, but both I would definitely push. They're ready for the main rosters. Breathes a little bit of life into both shows. The U.S. title open challenge from Jinder Mahal is going to be answered by Big E. Xavier Woods is in his corner, and Xavier accidentally costs Big E the match when he slides in a chair or something like that to try to help his partner out, and it kind of gets reversed. So, further seed sown of a dissension between the New Day. The SmackDown Tag Title match, champions of Bludgeon Brothers, and they're going to face off against New Day and Kofi. New Day's Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods. And Bludgeon Brothers going to retain. So, New Day getting 2 title shots this pay-per-view, losing both, and tempers are going to flare, and they're going to start blaming one another, whether it's deserved or not. The Raw Tag Title match, the Good Brothers versus the Authors of Pain, another rematch. AJ Styles at ringside for this one, and who comes out? Another masked brother, a bone soldier, if you will. And it doesn't work this time. Authors of Pain are ready for him, and Authors of Pain are going to win the tag titles in this match. Also, something new and different, I'm going to have a tag team Money in the Bank match. So this is tag teams from both shows, and this may end up being the main event right here because it's different. So tag team Money in the Bank, the winner gets a title shot to whoever they choose. So it's going to be the Revival, Titus Worldwide, the Usos, Breezango, Goldust and Hurricane, and Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. And in this match, the winner is going to be Sami and Kevin. And so they're going to get a title shot of their choice on Raw or SmackDown, wherever they decide to cash that in at. And for, let's see. Yeah. So we still have our title matches. Universal title match, Braun Strowman versus Finn Balor. Braun Strowman is going to walk away with a win here. Probably a good showing for Finn Balor. Just like before, AJ Styles is at ringside. Watching, doesn't interfere. So probably have the Good Brothers come out, see what's going on. And Braun's going to end up picking up the win. So the brothers may not really care for that, and they may all kind of throw up the too sweet, start thinking about what's in the future. World title match, Dolph Ziggler defending against Cesaro. So we're going to have some build here, tease maybe an alliance in the coming weeks to build up for this between Cesaro, Ziggler, and Zack Ryder. But then end up having Cesaro and Rollins kind of forced together on occasion to face off against other tag teams, including Ziggler and Ryder. And so that's going to build up to a title match. Cesaro versus Dolph Ziggler. Cesaro wins that contendership, but we're going to have Ziggler retain the title here. And that would end up being the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. And the next 2 nights on Raw and SmackDown would be the draft. I would have a lot of NXT guys called up in the draft, and I'd have some of the major players swapped around. Of course, we've already seen Cesaro and Rollins sit to SmackDown. I would end up having them stay there probably. Guys that are swapped on Raw may get swapped back on SmackDown as trades and whatnot start taking place. The biggest note here is that the Good Brothers, who will be the Raw Tag Champions, the SmackDown Tag Champions, will get moved to Raw. I'm sorry, I've got it backwards. The Good Brothers, who are the Raw Tag Team Champions, are going to get moved to SmackDown. So those titles would be rebranded the World Tag titles. And would you have them be blue? I don't know. I would probably have them go back to a black belt. The Bludgeon Brothers, quite the opposite. They're going to take the SmackDown tag titles to Raw, and those would get rebranded as Universal tag titles, and I would probably have those turned to the regular red belts. It's just something that ended up, when I was doing the draft, made the most sense. Both these teams are getting pushed, and instead of just having them drop the belts for a moment, I ended up having them swap around. The Good Brothers, who had lost the titles to Others of Pain, would end up winning them back on TV. So the Good Brothers end up getting the belts back. So yeah, that is our Money in the Bank. And the night following, Raw and SmackDown during the draft would be kind of like a pay-per-view unto itself, where a lot of big matches and these matches that we haven't seen in a while because guys have been swapped around and haven't been together. So that would lead into the next pay-per-view, Battleground, which I do believe is already done. So keep watching.